Dr. V here with my service dog Hestia and my new puppy in training Alice. Today I'm going to be talking to you about my evolution and how I've dealt with the public, including a physical manifestation of that attitude, which is patches. When I first started out as a service dog handler, people might have called me a bit of a jerk. Nowadays, people probably call me polite but reserved. And I'll tell you a little bit about that evolution. So when I first started out using a service dog, whenever people would ask me questions about my service dog or ask to pet my service dog or make noises at my service dog, I would tell them, "That's rude." And that left me with a really nasty taste in my mouth. I didn't like telling people, "That's rude," because I felt that was rude. And also, it made me feel like every encounter was this attack against me. So I was walking around the world feeling like it was this really negative place with a lot of negative energy directed at me. It really was not pleasant. But that was the culture of the community I was in at the time, was to be very direct and abrupt with people. So I did what the other teams were doing. Over time, I changed and I went to the other end of the spectrum. I started answering every single question anybody might have had about service dogs. I would often have 5 or 10-minute conversations with complete strangers in the middle of my grocery shopping, trying to answer every question that they had. And this was probably helpful for those strangers. I'm sure they learned a lot, and I'm sure I was able to educate a lot of people, but it took a lot of energy out of me. It was very draining. I did have a good experience in my head with my response to people in this way. I felt like I was educating, I felt like I was doing a job, so I felt useful and helpful instead of feeling like I was being attacked all the time. But I couldn't keep that up. It was simply too draining. So nowadays, I do a kind of hybrid model. When people ask me questions or make comments about my service dog, I try to be polite but succinct. So I answer a question briefly and politely, and then I go back to my shopping or whatever it was that I was in the middle of doing when I was interrupted. I find this method leaves me feeling pretty good overall. I still feel like I'm educating the public a little bit, but I also feel like I'm respecting my personal boundaries. I'm respecting my need for peace and quiet and my need not to spend 10 minutes educating every single person in the grocery store. And this is borne out with patches. So I see a lot of people nowadays having patches that say kind of mean things on them, some even with curse words on them. I totally get where people are coming from when they buy these patches, because especially when you're first starting out, you do feel kind of attacked by the public, kind of harassed with all the questions and attention that you get having a service dog. But I think that it might give the wrong impression to the public. I think that it might make people kind of upset when they read your patches. And I also think that it might make them less likely to help you were you in need of assistance. I also think that people, especially early on, tend to overload their dogs with patches, putting, as many patches as the vest will possibly fit. And that can be a lot of fun because patches can be really cool and a lot of fun to collect them and put them on your gear. But it also makes it less likely that people are going to read the patches. Because if there are 6 patches on the vest, they're just going to gloss over it and not read any. So nowadays, I like to stick with really simple patches and just 2 patches. Usually just service dog and do not pet. And I stick with those basic patches because they're more likely to be read and they're just a statement of fact. They're not an opinion, they're not an attitude, they're just, a polite, "This is what this is how you behave." I think that it's important to remember that it's not our job to educate every single person about every single issue about service dogs. But it is important to be polite in all of your interactions, or as polite as you can be depending on how the person is treating you. And I also think it's important that you respect your disability and respect your abilities to get into conversations, to answer questions. If you're having a hard day, it's perfectly fine to just pretend like you can't hear the person and keep moving. Remember that you didn't always know everything about service dogs. There was a time in your life that you might have pet a service dog without thinking, or you might have asked a question without knowing that it was inappropriate. So try to remember that these people aren't trying to harm you or offend you. People are just not thinking. They just don't know any better. So think about what you want to get out of the interaction. Do you want every interaction with the public to leave you feeling like you're in an adversarial relationship? Do you want to feel like you're fighting with the public all the time? Do you want to feel like you're an educator, a teacher, a bringer of knowledge about service dogs? Or do you want to feel like you're just another person going about your business who sometimes has to interact with strangers? Try out different interaction strategies with strangers and see how it makes you feel. Let me know in the comments how it turns out. Thanks for watching.